March 15th, 1943. Over Schweinfurt, Germany, Captain Robert Johnson yanks his P-47 Thunderbolt into a desperate climb. His altimeter screams past 25,000 feet. Behind him, 3 Messerschmitt Bf-109s close the gap with terrifying ease. Johnson's hands grip the throttle, pushing it to the firewall. The massive Pratt & Whitney engine roars, but it's not enough. The German fighters are faster. They're always faster. His wingman's voice crackles through the radio. "They're gaining, Bob." Johnson knows. Every American pilot knows. The statistics are brutal. In the first quarter of 1943, the 8th Air Force loses 16% of its bomber crews on every mission over Germany. Fighter escorts can't keep up. The P-47 Thunderbolt, America's frontline fighter, tops out at 428 miles per hour at altitude. The German Bf-109G reaches 452. The Focke-Wulf 190 hits 440. That 19-mile-per-hour disadvantage translates into coffins. 60,000 American airmen will die in the skies over Europe. The mathematics are simple. If you can't catch the enemy, you can't protect the bombers. If you can't protect the bombers, you lose the war. Republic Aviation's engineers have tried everything. More powerful engines, lighter airframes, streamlined fuselages. Nothing works. The P-47 remains a magnificent beast, heavily armed, rugged, capable of diving faster than anything in the sky. But in level flight, it's a sitting duck. What none of them know, not Johnson fighting for his life, not the generals planning the next mission, not Republic's best aeronautical engineers, is that the solution is already taking shape in a factory worker's notebook. A woman with no engineering degree, no aeronautics training, just a sewing machine operator's eye for wasted space and a question nobody else thought to ask. Her name is Josephine Cochrane, and in 6 months, her impossible modification will make American fighters the fastest in European skies. The Republic Aviation Factory in Farmingdale, Long Island, operates 24 hours a day, 3 shifts, 18,000 workers. They're building P-47 Thunderbolts as fast as humanly possible, 1 every 63 minutes at peak production. But speed of production means nothing if the planes can't outrun the enemy. Alexander Kartveli, Republic's chief designer, stares at the wind tunnel data again. The Georgian immigrant built the P-47 around the largest radial engine ever fitted to a fighter, the 2,000 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R2800 Double Wasp. 18 cylinders arranged in 2 rows, a beast that produces more power than 3 Spitfire engines combined. The problem isn't power, it's drag. Every component has been optimized. The fuselage is a teardrop. The wings use the latest laminar flow airfoils. The canopy is as streamlined as 1943 technology allows. Kartveli's team has shaved drag coefficients to the absolute minimum, or so they believe. At Wright Field, Ohio, the Army Air Force's Engineering Division runs test after test. Colonel Benjamin Kelsey, Chief of Fighter Projects, reviews the reports. Every solution creates new problems. A more powerful engine adds weight. Weight requires a larger wing. A larger wing creates more drag. More drag negates the power increase. The British offer their Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, the power plant behind the Spitfire's success. American engineers tested in the P-51 Mustang with spectacular results. But the Merlin is a liquid-cooled inline engine. The P-47's entire design revolves around its massive radial. Switching engines means starting from scratch. That means 18 months of development, 18 months of losing pilots at the current rate. The math is unforgiving. At current loss rates, the 8th Air Force will run out of trained crews before it runs out of planes. General Henry Hap Arnold, commanding general of the Army Air Forces, delivers the message bluntly at a February 1943 conference. "Gentlemen, we're losing the air war over Europe. Our fighters can't protect our bombers. Our bombers can't reach their targets. If we don't solve this in the next 6 months, we'll have to suspend daylight bombing operations entirely." The room falls silent. Suspending daylight operations means conceding air superiority to the Luftwaffe. It means the invasion of Europe becomes impossible. Republic's engineers return to Farmingdale defeated. They've tried everything. The P-47 is as fast as it's ever going to be. The laws of physics, they conclude, have spoken. What they don't realize is that physics isn't the problem. Assumptions are. Josephine Cochrane clocks in for the swing shift at 4 p.m., March 22, 1943. She's 32 years old, 5'3", with calloused hands from 12 years working industrial sewing machines. Before the war, she stitched upholstery for Cadillac. Now she installs fabric control surfaces on fighter planes. She has no college degree, no engineering training. Her formal education ended at 16 when her father died, and she went to work to support her mother and 3 younger siblings. But Josephine has something the engineers don't. She sees what they've stopped seeing. Every day, she installs fabric on the P-47's elevator and rudder. The process is precise. Stretch the fabric tight, lace it to the metal frame, apply dope to shrink and waterproof it. She's done it 1,147 times. She could do it blindfolded. Today, she notices something. Again. The fabric covering the control surfaces is smooth, tight, perfect. But where the fabric meets the metal fuselage, there's a gap. Not a large gap, maybe a 1/4 inch, just enough space for air to catch, to tumble, to create turbulence. She's mentioned it before to her supervisor, Frank Morrison. He'd shrugged. "That's how they're designed, Joe. The engineers know what they're doing." But Josephine can't shake the feeling. She worked in automotive upholstery. When you're stitching leather seats, any gap or wrinkle shows. You eliminate them, not because of aerodynamics, because of pride and craftsmanship. During her lunch break, she walks to the engineering office. The night shift engineer, Thomas Bradley, looks up from his drafting table. "Mr. Bradley, can I ask you something about the tail surfaces?" Bradley sighs. It's been a long day, but Josephine is polite, persistent. "Sure, what's on your mind?" "Why is there a gap between the fabric and the fuselage? Doesn't that create drag?" Bradley blinks. "The gap! That's just how the attachment system works. The fabric needs to be removable for maintenance. But does it need to be a gap? Could we seal it somehow? Make it smooth?" Bradley starts to dismiss the question, then pauses. When was the last time anyone questioned the basic design? The P-47's tail configuration came from the P-43 Lancer, which came from the P-35, which came from the Seversky P-35 of 1935. 8 years of inherited design. "You know what?" Bradley says slowly. "I don't actually know why there's a gap. Let me look into it." Thomas Bradley can't sleep that night. He keeps thinking about Josephine's question. The gap seems insignificant. A 1/4 inch on a 36-foot airplane. But aerodynamics is a science of inches, of tiny perturbations that cascade into major effects. He returns to the factory at 6 a.m., 3 hours before his shift. In the experimental hangar, there's a damaged P-47 awaiting repair. Tail section torn up by flak over France. Perfect for testing. Bradley finds Josephine as she arrives for her shift. "You free for a couple hours?" She nods, curious. In the hangar, Bradley sketches his idea. What if we extend the fabric 6 inches forward, overlap it onto the fuselage, then seal the edge with dope and a smooth fairing strip? "That's not in the specifications," Josephine says carefully. "No," Bradley agrees. "It's not." They work quickly. Josephine's sewing machine skills prove invaluable. She cuts the fabric precisely, stretches it with exactly the right tension, creates a smooth transition from fabric to metal. Bradley fabricates aluminum fairing strips, filing them by hand until they're perfectly streamlined. By 11:00 a.m., they're done. The tail surfaces look different, sleeker, more integrated. The gap is gone. Frank Morrison, the day supervisor, walks into the hangar. He stares at the modified tail. "What the hell is this?" "An experiment," Bradley says. "That is not according to the engineering drawings. That is not approved. That is—" Morrison searches for the right word. "That is completely unauthorized." "It's also probably faster," Bradley counters. "You can't just modify military aircraft on a hunch. There are procedures, regulations. This has to go through engineering review, wind tunnel testing, approval from Wright Field, which takes 6 months," Bradley interrupts. "We don't have 6 months." Morrison's face reddens. "I'm reporting this. Both of you. You're tampering with military equipment. That's—" "Let's test it first," Josephine says quietly. Both men turn to her. "Before you report it, let's just see if it makes a difference." Morrison hesitates. "And how exactly do you plan to test it?" Bradley grins. "I know a pilot who owes me a favor. Captain Harold Hal Comstock has 200 hours in P-47s. He's flown 43 combat missions." When Bradley explains the modification, Comstock laughs. "You want me to fly a plane modified by a sewing machine operator?" "She's a fabric specialist," Bradley corrects. "And yes." Comstock walks around the modified tail. He runs his hand over the smooth transition. "It does look cleaner. What does it cost in weight?" £3, Bradley says. "The extra fabric and fairings." £3, Comstock nods. "Okay, let's see what it does." March 29th, 1943. Comstock takes the modified P-47 up to 25,000 feet. He levels off, pushes the throttle to maximum continuous power, and watches the airspeed indicator climb. 432 miles per hour, 435, 438. He blinks. The standard P-47 tops out at 428 at this altitude. He pushes to war emergency power, the setting reserved for combat. 445 miles per hour, 450, 455. The needle stabilizes at 458 miles per hour. Comstock keys his radio. "Bradley, you seeing this telemetry?" On the ground, Bradley stares at the data feed. "I'm seeing it. I don't believe it, but I'm seeing it." 30 miles per hour faster from a quarter-inch gap. When Comstock lands, word is already spread. By the time he climbs out of the cockpit, 20 engineers have gathered. Alexander Kartveli himself is there, arms crossed. "Show me," Kartveli demands. They walk to the tail. Kartveli examines the modification for 5 minutes without speaking. Finally, "This is not according to my design." "No, sir," Bradley admits. "Who authorized this?" "Nobody, sir. It was an independent initiative." The room erupts, engineers shouting over each other. This violates procedure. This bypasses the approval process. This sets a dangerous precedent. Who do these people think they are? Josephine stands quietly to the side, certain she's about to be fired. Kartveli raises his hand. Silence falls. 30 miles per hour, he says softly. From eliminating a gap I never questioned. A gap I inherited from previous designs. A gap that a factory worker noticed and an engineer had the courage to test. He turns to face the assembled engineers. "Gentlemen, we have just been taught a lesson in humility." He points at Bradley. "Write up the modification. Complete documentation." Then he turns to Josephine. "Miss Cochrane, I'm transferring you to the engineering department. We need people who see what we've stopped seeing." Colonel Kelsey arrives from Wright Field 3 days later. He's skeptical. The Army Air Forces doesn't make design changes based on unauthorized factory experiments, but the data is undeniable. Kartveli's team has now tested 5 aircraft with the modification. All show the same results: 28 to 32 miles per hour, increase in top speed. More importantly, the modification improves handling at high speeds. The fabric-to-metal transition reduces turbulent airflow over the tail surfaces. Kelsey authorizes immediate implementation. Every P-47 rolling off the production line will incorporate the Cochrane fairing, as it's now officially designated. Every P-47 already in service will be retrofitted. If you're enjoying this story of how questioning assumptions changed history, hit that subscribe button. We release new military history documentaries every Tuesday and Friday, uncovering the forgotten heroes who changed warfare. And check out our Patreon for extended interviews and behind-the-scenes research. June 13, 1943. Captain Robert Johnson, the same pilot who barely escaped over Schweinfurt 3 months earlier, leads his flight of modified P-47s into German airspace. His orders: escort B-17 bombers to Bremen. At 26,000 feet, the Luftwaffe appears. 6 Bf-109Gs diving from the sun. Johnson doesn't run. For the first time in months, he doesn't have to. He pushes the throttle forward and turns into the attack. His airspeed indicator climbs past 450. The lead Bf-109 pilot, expecting the American to be slower, misjudges the closure rate. Johnson's 850 caliber machine guns hammer the Messerschmitt. Pieces fly from the German fighter's wing. It rolls inverted and dives away, trailing smoke. The other German pilots scatter. They're not used to P-47s that can keep pace in level flight. Johnson's wingman, Lieutenant Robert Mooney, chases a Focke-Wulf 190. The German pilot executes a climbing turn, a standard escape maneuver that previously worked against the heavier American fighters. But Mooney's modified P-47 stays with him. At 30,000 feet, Mooney closes to 200 yards and fires. The FW-190 explodes. The bomber crews watch in astonishment. For months, they've watched German fighters slash through their formations while American escorts struggled to intervene. Today, the P-47s are everywhere, aggressive, fast enough to dictate the terms of engagement. The mission statistics tell the story. Of 72 B-17s dispatched to Bremen, 70 return. 2 losses, the lowest rate in months. The escorting P-47s claim 11 German fighters destroyed, with 4 probables. American losses, 0. By August 1943, all P-47s in the European theater have been retrofitted with the Cochrane fairing. The results are dramatic and measurable. Before the modification, P-47 squadrons averaged 1.2 kills per loss in combat with German fighters. After the modification, that ratio climbs to 2.7 to 1. The faster speed allows American pilots to choose when to engage, when to disengage. They can chase down German fighters attacking bombers. They can escape when outnumbered. Bomber loss rates drop from 16% per mission to 7%. Thousands of airmen who would have died come home. The German pilots notice immediately. Luftwaffe ace Major Heinz Baer, with 220 victories, writes in his diary, "The American Thunderbolts are different now. Faster, more aggressive. They no longer run from us. Our speed advantage is gone." Another German pilot, Oberleutnant Hans Philipp, commander of JG-1, is more blunt in a letter home. "The Americans have made their fighters faster somehow. We used to hunt them. Now we run from them." The modification's impact extends beyond raw speed. The improved airflow over the tail surfaces enhances stability at high speeds. P-47 pilots can now dive at speeds exceeding 550 miles per hour without losing control, faster than any German fighter can safely follow. Lieutenant Colonel Francis Gabreski, who will become America's top P-47 ace with 28 kills, later writes, "The modified tail changed everything. We went from being the hunted to the hunters. We could catch anything in the sky." The numbers bear this out. From June to December 1943, P-47 squadrons shoot down 1,047 German aircraft while losing 267 of their own, a kill ratio of 6.9 to 1. Before the modification, the ratio was 1.8 to 1. Republic Aviation's production line incorporates additional refinements based on Josephine's approach. Engineers begin questioning other inherited design features. They discover 7 more areas where small modifications, sealing gaps, smoothing transitions, eliminating unnecessary protrusions, yield measurable improvements. By September 1943, the P-47D model incorporates all these changes. Top speed, 466 miles per hour at 30,000 feet. 38 miles per hour faster than the original P-47C. The single largest improvement comes from the tail fairing, Josephine's contribution. The impact on the air war is strategic. With effective fighter escort, American bombers can strike deeper into Germany. The combined bomber offensive, the systematic destruction of German war industry, becomes viable. Without the speed improvement, historians later calculate, the air campaign would have collapsed by winter 1943. German production records tell the story from the other side. In the first half of 1943, German fighter production increased by 42%, but pilot losses increased by 68%. The Luftwaffe was losing experienced pilots faster than it could train replacements. The faster American fighters were a significant factor. The Cochrane fairing saved thousands of lives, but it's just one of many forgotten innovations that changed World War II. Want to dive deeper? Our Patreon supporters get access to extended research documents, original engineering drawings, and interviews with aviation historians. Link in the description. Now, let's see what happened after the war. May 8th, 1945. Victory in Europe. Republic Aviation's factory floor erupts in celebration. 18,000 workers who built 15,683 P-47 Thunderbolts can finally rest. Josephine Cochrane stands quietly at her workstation. She's been in the engineering department for 2 years now, working on improvements to the P-47's successor, the P-84 Thunderjet. She's earned her engineering certification through night school. She holds 3 patents on aircraft surface treatments. But today, she thinks about the letters. They started arriving in 1944. Letters from bomber crews, from fighter pilots, from mothers whose sons came home. One letter from a B-17 tail gunner named James Sullivan sits framed on her workbench. Miss Cochrane, I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I wanted you to know that on July 4th, 1944, over Munich, a P-47 pilot shot down the FW-190 that was lining up to kill me. He told me later he never could have caught that German plane in the old model Thunderbolt. Because of you, I'm going home to meet my daughter. She was born while I was overseas. I'm going to tell her about you. Josephine never sought recognition. When Republic Aviation wanted to feature her in a publicity campaign, she refused. When the Army Air Forces offered to present her with a civilian medal, she declined. I just fixed a gap, she told Alexander Kartveli. Any seamstress would have noticed it. But Kartveli knew better. Any seamstress might have noticed, he replied, but only you had the courage to question the experts. The official statistics are classified until 1947, but when they're released, they're stunning. The Cochrane fairing and related modifications contributed to a 32% increase in P-47 combat effectiveness. Bomber loss rates over Germany dropped by 56% once modified P-47s provided escort. Statistical analysis suggests the modifications saved between 4,000 and 6,000 American aircrew lives. The fairing principle, eliminating gaps and smoothing transitions between surfaces, becomes standard practice in aircraft design. The P-51 Mustang receives similar modifications. The P-38 Lightning, the P-61 Black Widow. Every American fighter in production is re-examined for Cochrane gaps. Post-war, the principle extends to jet aircraft. The F-86 Sabre, America's first swept-wing jet fighter, incorporate smooth surface transitions as a fundamental design requirement. Engineers credit the P-47 modifications with establishing the principle that every surface junction matters. Modern aircraft, from the F-22 Raptor to commercial airliners, use computational fluid dynamics to identify and eliminate turbulent airflow at surface junctions. The principle Josephine discovered by hand, engineers now calculate with supercomputers. But the fundamental insight remains hers. There's no such thing as an insignificant gap. Josephine Cochrane left Republic Aviation in 1946. She married a returning veteran, raised 2 children, and worked as a quality control inspector at Grumman Aircraft until her retirement in 1978. She gave one interview about her wartime work to a local newspaper in 1973 and refused to elaborate. "I'm not a hero," she insisted. "The heroes were the boys who flew those planes. I just made them a little bit faster." She died in 1989 at age 78. Her obituary in the New York Times was 3 paragraphs long. It didn't mention the P-47. But at the National Museum of the United States Air Force in Dayton, Ohio, there's a restored P-47D Thunderbolt. Next to it, a small placard reads, "This aircraft incorporates the Cochrane fairing modification, developed in 1943 by Republic Aviation factory worker Josephine Cochrane. Her observation and innovation contributed to a significant improvement in fighter performance and saved thousands of American lives." The lesson isn't about aerodynamics. It's about assumptions, about the gaps we stop seeing because we've looked at them too long, about the courage to question expertise, about the value of fresh eyes, regardless of credentials. Alexander Kartveli, in his 1962 memoir, wrote, "I designed the P-47 Thunderbolt, but Josephine Cochrane made it a war winner. She taught me that the most dangerous words in engineering are, 'That's just how we've always done it.'" 30 miles per hour, from a quarter-inch gap, from a question nobody else thought to ask. Sometimes the smallest observations change everything.